You in the market for a hardy aquarium plant? Look no further. Java fern is just about as hardy as they come. In today's video, I'm going to cover what you need to do in order to grow it, trim it, and propagate it. Talking about Java fern today, the hardiest plant out there. It is pretty much bulletproof. So when I say hardy, what do I mean? Well, it can survive a wide range of conditions in the aquarium. It can also survive a wide range of conditions outside the aquarium. I've had this bucket of narrow leaf Java fern sitting in my garage. It's not even full of water. There's a little bit at the bottom, keeping it humid in there, and it's doing just fine. Most aquarium plants can live in a bucket for like 1 to 2 weeks. This stuff has been in there for June, July, August, September, October. It's now November, so 5 months. Java fern is also extremely resilient when it comes to resisting herbivores. It's one of very few plants that work well in African cichlid or silver dollar tanks. It's truly a timeless classic, one of the most popular aquarium plants that's been around since the dawn of aquarium times. Some characteristic features of Java fern are really thick, leathery leaves, which is part of the reason that fish won't eat it. Apparently, it also tastes bad. One of my favorite things about Java fern is the strong venation. They show up as 2 lines of cells that run up and down the leaves, and in a healthy fern, the cells will look like they've kind of been stamped in wax, like almost popping out of the leaf. Even though there are many different types, Java fern is actually just one species, Microsorum pteropus. There are varieties that have really large leaves, small ones, single-stranded leaves, ruffled leaves, trident shapes. Just to name a few of the varieties are Java fern Windelov, Philippine, miniature, narrowleaf, miniature narrowleaf, trident, sunset, and needle leaf. Java fern grows off a rooty stem known as a rhizome. For the most part, when you first buy one, it'll look like it's kind of growing horizontally off the rhizome. Eventually, the rhizomes will crisscross, growing in every direction, and the fern bushes up, growing into a round shape. Smaller varieties have leaves about the size of a finger maybe at the most, but most are much larger and can easily outgrow any tank without being pruned. Coming out of the rhizomes, you'll also notice that there are lots of fibrous roots. You can trim some of these if you don't like the way or where they're growing, but you'll want to leave a lot of them intact for healthy nutrient uptake. Java fern can obviously be found in Java, but it also grows in the wild across Malaysia, Thailand, and in some parts of tropical China. It can oftentimes be found growing alongside creeks where it's either fully submerged or fully emerged from water, depending on the season. This is the most forgiving plant that you can put in your aquarium. It tolerates such an incredibly wide range of parameters, and it doesn't need much light or nutrition. That being said, you can stick it in a high-tech tank and get insanely dense growth. Java fern is known for its slow growth, but as plants become established in aquariums, they tend to grow faster and faster, with large plants growing almost exponentially. In terms of specific parameters, Java fern does best in a pH of 5 to 8, GH of 0 to 30, KH of 0 to 15, flow from low to high. If it's really low, you'll want to brush it off every now and then to prevent debris from settling and growing into algae. CO2 is not required. Lighting from extremely low to pretty high. Temp from 65 to 83 Fahrenheit or 18 to 28 Celsius. This is probably one of the widest ranges of parameters that you'll see for any species. That's one of the reasons that it's so popular. It's great for a typical planted tank or for a high pH African cichlid tank, and maybe even on occasion be found in brackish tanks. Though at that point, you're probably getting into range where you're not getting great growth and the fern's not looking so vibrant. When it comes time to place a new Java fern in your tank, you'll want to make sure that the rhizomes are not in the substrate, whether that's soil, sand, or gravel. I mentioned that briefly already, but rhizomes need to have access to the water column for nutrient uptake and gas exchange. It's perfectly fine to rest them on the surface of the aquarium, maybe use like a little weight, like a small rock over the rhizome. Eventually roots will set into the soil, holding the plant in place. You can also attach it to sticks, branches, or rocks by just wedging them into place or by using super glue or sewing thread. Just go easy on the super glue if you go that route. Too much can suffocate the rhizome. Trimming Java ferns isn't absolutely essential for maintaining a healthy plant like it is with stem plants or carpeting plants, but that being said, there are some helpful tips to maintaining a Java fern bush. First thing, super important, if you do decide to cut it, you don't want to hack back at it like you would the same way a stem plant or a carpeting plant. You can't just start trimming everything back to the desired length. You need to trim individual leaves. Think about each leaf as being all or nothing. Cutting a leaf in half will cause it to start forming holes and discolorations. If your goal is to keep the plant small, the best way is to be constantly trimming leaves off the rhizome as soon as they hit a certain size. In a healthy plant, you'll get enough leaf turnover that this will be sustainable. Take this for example, even though it's an African water fern, not a Java, it's pretty similar, and I've used that trimming method on it. If I let this plant grow to its full potential, it would completely take over this whole area, this side of the tank. Each leaf would extend out to here, but because it's in a dark corner and I'm able to stay on top of trimming, I've been able to keep it at kind of a stunted growth. In other parts of the tank, where they are getting tons of light and growing like crazy, I use another method. I wait for them to get insanely large and then I rip them in half. You can pull a bundle like this out and rip it along the rhizome, usually multiple rhizomes when you're talking this size of a Java fern. Then I'll have two plants, one I'll put back in the tank in the same spot, and the other I'll rip up into smaller chunks and divvy them out to different tanks. It's fairly common for the oldest leaves on a plant to essentially grow old and die. At this point, they'll appear full of holes, turn brown, and look kind of shriveled. They will, however, not fall off the plant. It's best to take some scissors and cut it at the base of the leaf, essentially cutting the dead weight. If your plant's healthy, bright green, and growing lots of new leaves, then this is nothing to worry about. If most of the plant is looking like that, then you might have an issue. Common issues in Java fern. Even though this plant is super hardy, there are a couple issues that can pop up. Translucent leaves, holes in leaves, and large-scale browning of the plant. These aren't good signs and can be caused by two main issues. Translucency is more closely related to intense lighting. That's easily resolved by lowering your light or moving the Java fern to a shaded area. I do think it's worth mentioning that even though it's generally accepted in the aquarium industry that high lighting can be bad for Java ferns, I've kept them under some pretty intense lights on many occasions. I think part of the equation is the use of routine fertilizers and CO2 in combination with strong lighting. If Java ferns don't have the fuel to grow under strong lights, that's when they tend to fry. Browning and steady appearance of holes is caused by low nutrition. You can go online and find charts that specify how particular nutrient deficiencies manifest in plants, and then go buy those particular nutrients. Rather than playing scientific investigator, I'd recommend that you just get a nice all-in-one fertilizer. There are many terrific brands to pick from. If you have a heavy fish load, then you can go with some micronutrients. If you have a light fish load, go with some heavier ferts like Nylock G, APT3, or Easy Green, you'd have to have a really low nutrient load in your tank to experience major decline of your Java fern. Regardless, adding some ferts to the water column will really help boost the Java fern's growth. It'll also benefit other plants that you have in there, so it's definitely worth considering. I think it'll be a benefit all around for your tank. All the video footage of the Java fern in this video has at least periodic fertilizing. One last issue with Java fern is algae growth. As with all slow growing plants with large leaves, algae growth can happen. There are generally two solutions to algae growth on Java fern. First, increase the flow. Stagnant water allows for sedimentation along leaves, which inevitably results in algae. Second, work on giving the plants more nutrients or better light. Unhealthy plants aren't able to fend off algae in the way healthy plants are. I've seen tanks with tons of algae on the hardscape, but none on the Java ferns because they're really healthy. Java fern is really easy to propagate. There's a few different ways that this can happen. I've already touched on the first way, that's to rip off a chunk of the rhizome. It can be as big or small as you want, as long as there are a few leaves coming out of it. Eventually, that clipping will grow to the same size as the mother plant. If you see roots forming on the tip of leaves, chances are that's a baby plant budding off of the mother plant. The roots that you see are coming off the baby plant's rhizomes. They are really easy to pull off and place elsewhere to grow. The last way to propagate Java fern is completely up to the plant by release of spores that develop into new plants. The underside of leaves might have rows of little brown bumps, sporangia, just like the tracker pads from old laptops. If you know what I'm saying. Sporangia release spores, which grow into plants over long periods of time. I've had this happen on a couple of occasions, but I really wouldn't count on it for reliable Java fern cultivation. Java fern is such an incredible plant. I absolutely love it. Use it in so many of the tanks that I set up for myself and for my clients. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned something from it. If you did, please consider supporting my channel with a quick sub, like, or comment. Put a lot of time and energy into my channel and clearly enjoyed it if you made it this far in the video. Thanks so much. I really sincerely appreciate it. Until next time, see ya.